Welcome to the Thundercast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week. So keep it right here. The Thundercast is on the loose. Before yesterday, I thought Marshall's 2026 secondary was going to be pretty good. Talented enough to be one of the better defensive back units in the Sun Belt. Then everything changed. Boogie Trotter was granted a fifth year of eligibility, returning one of the conference's most dynamic football players to a room that had already featured Daytione Smith, major portal additions, and two veteran position coaches. The 2025 secondary has nothing to do with this conversation anymore. The question isn't whether this group is good. The question is, has Marshall's 2026 secondary gone from good to dangerous? Thanks for downloading another episode of the Thundercast. You can follow us on Twitter at Thundercast_pod and listen to the show anywhere you'd like to listen to your favorite podcast. Watch us, of course, on the Thundercast YouTube channel. And while you're there checking out the latest episodes, hit the subscribe button, a thumbs up, and give us some of your hype points to help this episode find more home pages of Herd fans. Russ, man, what a big day of news. Holy moly. Yeah. Kind of sort of expected, but didn't think it was really gonna happen type of deal. I've been asking you, how do you feel about the room? So now, with knowing what we know, how do you feel about the DB room?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm good. This has been a great development. We talked to Steve New, and we were confident when Jed and I spoke to him that this would get done. Just when you lay it out, the reasoning behind it with these 2022 athletes and how they specifically had been singled out, where before them and after them had not. So it just made sense, especially when you're looking at everything cards on the table. But until it was on a roster, it was still in my head, well, the NCAA is going to come out with some appeal. It'll get held up. It might be mid-season, something crazy. And Marshall went ahead and put him on the roster. That gives me a little more confident moving forward point of view to say, yeah, we can stand by doing this episode. I had prepared before he had been put on the roster. I had prepared for this episode with the guess, I guess you would say, that he would be. Mm-hmm. So nothing really changed for me other than my confidence about doing that really skyrocketed.
Yeah,
being on an official roster is a little different,
Yeah, and I guess you can also say it's not just here at Marshall. There are athletes across the country now being added back to rosters. So this is not a one-off thing. This is a movement now. So that's got to make you feel a little bit. It's got to make you feel a little bit more confident that this will stick. Of course, there's a lot of moving parts still. The NCAA has already put out a response, and they're digging their heels in, and they're going to try to prove why they're right when they just singled out a class of athletes and did them wrong, honestly. Right. So, but I feel good that this will stick, and even if they overturn this stuff, they'd be in a really bad situation to say, well, now every team that had a player that played, they have to forfeit those games, because what if you have two teams playing each other that both had teams? It's just you might as well just let it go. Just lick your wounds and let this one go. The athletes won.
They've lost on everything else. I don't see where they have a leg to stand on.
Yeah. So moving on to the 2026 secondary, let's talk about the ranking here. Phil still sees this as the number 3, tied for number 3 unit in the Sun Belt pre-Boogie Trotter. Like all of this stuff, well, not all of this stuff, but a lot of this stuff was pre-Boogie Trotter. You got to think that would notch up and at least at a minimum put them at the number 3 spot by themselves, no longer in a tie. So I think Phil still would call this a top 3 unit in the Sun Belt with the addition of Boogie Trotter. Let's see. Daytione Smith was named a preseason Sun Belt selection, a first-team Sun Belt selection. by the conference and by Phil Steele. Again, you would like to think Boogie would have made that list as well. He was a first-teamer in 2025, but now all these preseason accolades don't really matter. Just gives you a little bit of context about what we're looking at. Of course, there was an overhaul from the position coaches in this one too. We went away from a secondary coach to now 2 coaches. They've split responsibilities. Dean Hood comes in to coach the safeties. Chip West comes in to coach the corners. And of course, the whole thing is being overseen by Brad Lambert, the new defensive coordinator. Any thoughts there before we move into departed players?
Well, I don't want to spoil a little thing for later, so I'd rather save that.
All right. Oh, I forgot. Before you give the departed players, let's give some context, some general stats from last year to give people an idea just how, again, you can't contribute all of this to the secondary, but you kind of can. Marshall allowed 3,140 passing yards throughout the season last year, which was an average of 261.7 pass yards per game allowed, 24 passing touchdowns given up. Opponents averaged nearly 15 yards per completion at 14.6. Opponents also averaged 8.5 yards per pass attempt. Opposing quarterbacks completed 58.4% of their passes, and Marshall recorded about an interception a game. They got 13 on the year. So there's some general context. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school at this point, Russ, to say that the secondary was, I don't know, the reason that a lot of games went the way they did. We talked about the chunk plays and the bugaboo that plagued the herd all year long. Good. Well,
you want me to do those now? Since
if you got it, you can talk
stats.
Yeah.
I just didn't want. I didn't know if you were finished, so I'm just going here. This is a tweet that I put up last year at the end of the season, and it says talked about chunk plays, 20+ yards, being a crippler for MU defense all year. How bad have they bitten us? Number allowed and rank, and remember last year's 136 teams, 20+ yards. There were 57 plays that we gave up, and that was tied for 113th. 30+, there were 31 plays. It was tied for 129th. 40+, 23, that was tied for 135. That means you were dead last. That was the most anyone gave up. 50+, 12, we were tied at 133, and that too was tied with other people, so that made us last or next to last. 60+, there were 7 tied for 129, that made us next to last. 70+, we gave up 5. Now you think of that, 5 different 70+ yard plays, tied for 135th. That is also dead last. 80+, there were 2 of them tied for 127th. 90+, that was at MTSU, tied for 127. But KD, 126 were tied with 0 given up.
Yeah.
So we were in effect last there as well. Yeah. And I said, while this seems like a slam against the team or the defense, it's not enough characters for one tweet, but Marshall is nowhere near last in total yards against or scoring D, so it is literally just a few plays per game of missed tackles or blown coverages, fixable for next season. I wanted to read those 2 tweets because that gives us some amazing context to talk about here today. The majority of these chunk plays were from not solely on the defensive backs, but they had the blown coverages for some of them, and they had the missed tackles for some of them. A large portion ended up relying on, of course, the back final effort, to make those stops.
Yeah. So imagine, it didn't really feel like it that much, but when you say, that's like a 70-yard play allowed every 2.5 games, essentially. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. So we've got a lot of context to talk about. We've got a lot of exciting players that came. This is completely revamped defense, especially a revamped secondary. But being able to return 2 of easily your 3 biggest weapons is It's a great place to start. But we do have to talk about those players that have departed from the program that will not be a part of the 2026 roster and will not be on the field to help the Herd win some games. So take it away.
Sam Smith had a great year last year. He exhausted his eligibility. Daryl Sweeting transferred to UAB a little bit late in the game, and it was I think the same day he entered the portal, he signed with them. Read into that how you will. Marvin Myers exhausted his eligibility. J.D. McKnight exhausted his eligibility. Al Ashford III exhausted his eligibility. Aiden Willis entered the transfer portal. I have not seen him say where he went yet. So technically, he is not on our roster, but not on anyone's roster while he's still trying to find a place to land. And then after the spring game, Tashawn Jeter and Cam Nitty both have been dismissed. They are no longer on the roster.
Okay. So a fair amount of turnover. What is that? Like 8 guys, 7 guys,
One,
something like
two,
that?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So there you go. You see, there was a lot of room to make some improvements, and some improvements were gonna have to be made. Now, there are a slew of players that do return in the secondary. A lot of them did not see much, if any, playing time last year. So there will be a significant opportunity for some youngsters to get meaningful action for the first time, but there are some guys that return that did play a lot of ball for the Herd, and they did play high-level football for the Herd. So let's talk about returning players.
And not as many of these as the wide receivers and tight ends had number changes, but there are a handful. So pay attention if you want to know who's where on the field, including just today, Boogie Trotter is back with his number 1. So that had previously been taken by a newcomer, and they let him have that back. So returning from 2025, Boogie Trotter, number 1, 5'10", 170 pounds. Number 17, Daytione Smith, 6 foot even, 192 pounds. 11, Josh Pierre Lewis, 5'11", 168, down from 176 last year. 0, that's one of these number changes. Caleb Clark Glover, 5'11", 184. Last year we listed him as 5'9", 184. So Dwight Galt's put a couple of inches on him there. It's looking good. Number 12, Lua Kinsey Jules, 6 foot even, 177 pounds, right at his 176 from last year. 18, Daniel Harris, 6'4", 190, 187 last year. 23, Sammy Etienne, 5'11", 187, right around the 188 he was last year. Number 4, Philip Davis, 6'1", 191, exactly the same. 19, Zaw Jackson, 5'10", 178, down from 185, so very similar to the drop from Josh Pierre Lewis. And then we got number 32, Pete Shue, 5'10", 180. 185 was what he was last year. And number 29, Jason Haggerty, 5'11", 174, up 4 pounds from 170 last year.
So you can see a lot of guys do return from a secondary that struggled. I don't know what you want to make out of that, but a lot of the guys that departed were the ones that were playing a lot of the downs and in-game action. I mean, we got quality play from Boogie Trotter. You get quality play from Daytione Smith, Josh Pierre Lewis, and Caleb Clark Glover. Sparing play from maybe some of the other guys.
Philip Davis played 47 snaps, I think it was.
Yeah, so after that, it's basically guys that are looking to get their first meaningful action this year. So not a bad core to bring back. And then you get an opportunity to offset that with your portal moves and your high school recruiting. But before we talk about newcomers to the program, let's talk about our presenting sponsor for the 2026 Position Group Breakdown Series, and that, of course, is Secure Construction Company. Big Herd fans, family-owned since 2000. What is it? The 14-time best in the tri-state roofing company. You've heard us talk about what they do with your roof works, repairs, or full replacements. You can call and get a free, honest, fair quote. But now we're talking about what they can do for you in the bathroom space. And we've all got aging relatives, parents, grandparents perhaps, or maybe you yourself have succumbed to some type of accident and need to be a little bit more sure-handed in the bathroom. Well, Secure Construction can help you with that as well. Russ has got something keyed up to give you a little bit more insight on what they can do for you. So we'll let the pros tell you about it.
Hey, Tri-State, do you have an ugly, unsafe shower? Secure Construction can help. People fall every day in showers that are unsafe. Secure Construction can come and give you a free estimate on a new safe shower that will transform your bathroom. Give us a call today to speak with one of our shower experts and get a free estimate on a new, safe shower now. Secure Construction. Home improvement in secure hands.
KD, I always say Herd fans love doing business with Herd fans. Eddie Keller and Secure Construction, family owned, has been since it started. Massive Herd fans.
Yeah, again, we really appreciate them coming on board and helping us present the 2026 Position Group Breakdown Series to you, the Herd fans. When you do call and contact them about a roofing quote, a bathroom quote, or anything else, make sure that you mention that you heard about them on the Thundercast so that they know that people are listening, hear what they're all about, and decided to make their first call to Secure Construction Company. We can't thank those guys enough. And now back to some football. Let's talk about this newcomer class because they hit the portal pretty hard. You could tell they needed some guys that could come in, contribute immediately, be impact players immediately, and also find some guys that added depth. And then they took some guys out of the high school ranks as well. One of the few where they took multiple guys in the high school ranks. So let's run down the list of newcomers to the Herd in 2026.
So number 8, Eddie Pleasant III, 5'11", 183, comes to us from Buffalo. Also from Buffalo, number 2, Charles McCarthrans, 5'10", 181. Number 3, Terrente Hinton, 6'2", 200, out of NC State. Number 9, Braden Hall, 5'10", 169, Central Connecticut State. The only thing that I want to say about that is his number changed from the spring game, but that has been changed for a few weeks now. So if you've looked at the roster recently, you will see that he's been number 9, but he was a different number previously. Number 28, Ahmad Edwards, 5'10", 161 from Kentucky. And if you remember, he transferred and was a wide receiver and got converted as soon as he got onto the roster to defensive back. 16, Kendall Anderson, 6'1", 203 from Morgan State. Number 37, Atlee Cowan, 6'2", 189, was 191 pounds with us last year. Comes to us from across the hall where he was a wide receiver last year with Marshall, and it's a position change. Remember, we talked last week, he and Chase Massey basically just flopped positions. Number 15, Tristan Lester, 5'9", 195 pounds, is out of Milton High School in Georgia. Number 20, Zeke Gunn, 6 foot even, 200 pounds, comes to us from Orlando Christian Prep. And then finally, number 22, J.C. Houston, 6'2", 168 from Withrow High School in Cincinnati.
So a lot of movement in the portal. Like I said, a lot of instant impact type players, a lot of guys that played a lot of football in their previous stops. You think about the top 4 you named off there, McCarthrans and Hinton and Pleasant and Hall, all guys that have contributed at their previous stops in a pretty big way. Then if that name Tristan Lester sounds familiar, yes, it should, because he's the brother of also newcomer to the program, TJ Lester, out of the running back room. So the brothers Lester will both be suiting up for the Herd in 2026. Russ, let's talk about some projected starters in this one. And yep, it took a last minute change for me to get things right and accurate. So I got 2 corners, a nickel, and 2 safeties. That's just what I feel like we'll see quite a bit. So that's the way I went with it.
Let's start with cornerbacks, and I think we're both going to be in agreement, even though I had a couple of days in advance. I was rolling the dice, and I went with Boogie Trotter coming back, and it's come to pass now. So he's my cornerback 1, even though they don't differentiate 1 and 2. It's just first one I'm listing.
I don't know how you can start anywhere other than Boogie Trotter, the first team all SBC selection a year ago, easily one of the best players in the conference, not just the best defensive backs in the conference, one of the best overall players in the conference. He was electricity in a bottle last year. And man, he was fun to watch. We all hoped he would get another year back and be able to come back and suit up one more time. Dude, this is a piece that I feel like elevates the secondary to a whole new level with what just based on what we saw last year. So he's got to be your corner one. How about number two?
Well, I've got his stats loaded, and let me tell you real quick. 73 total tackles, 36 of those solo, 37 assists, half a sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 5 interceptions. Remember, he took 2 of those to the house. 133 yards on those 5 interceptions for a 26.6% average, long of 60. He had 5 passes deflected. Looked at a little bit of his advanced stuff with targets and things like that, and he was our best coverage person by a wide margin last year as far as being ranked by PFF. He was higher than anyone else and one of the highest in the league, and his grade was like 85 point something is how he graded out, and as a defensive back, that's pretty daggone good.
Yeah, I'll say. He, like I said, one of the best players on Marshall's roster, period, offense or defense. So huge piece to get back in 2026. How about number two for you?
I've got Charles McCarthrans, and he comes to us from Buffalo, where he was a 3-year starter there. Now, last year he was limited to 4 games, a little bit of an injury, but great. You think he's coming to us to play for a full year, and he's been a starter 3 years already previously. So that gave him a nod to me over Eddie Pleasant third. And probably not spoiling anything. I don't think anybody's going to realize that we weren't going to have him up there high. If Boogie Trotter doesn't come back, I like both of those guys there. But I'm going with McCarthrans over them, over Pleasant, because of the 3-year starting, that he's just a little bit more seasoned and ready than Eddie Pleasant third.
Yeah, this is where I have McCarthrans as well. I see him as the opposite corner aside from Boogie. If Boogie's not on the roster, I too think it would have been McCarthrans and Pleasant the third, but I'm giving the nod to McCarthrans for what you said. He'd been a 3-year starter. He's already done it and played pretty well. But we've also repeatedly heard Tony Gibson mention the name Charles McCarthrans as a guy that they really like what he's doing. And that says more than anything to me. If the coach is talking about you, well, you're probably gaining some favor in the starting lineup. So if the season started today, I would feel like it would be Boogie and McCarthrans bookending the corners. That's just how I see it. All right, now let's talk about a nickel. I feel like we'll see a lot of nickel this year. We've even heard Tony Gibson talk about the play from a nickel. Who do you think will be in that spot?
It's who he's mentioned a lot specifically in that spot, and he played it a lot last year, and it's JPL, Josh Pierre-Louis. I see him coming back into that starting role. Yes, they will have some situations where maybe they have 3 corners, maybe they have 2 safeties. They don't have Pierre-Louis in quote-unquote a nickel. But the way we're doing it here, 2 cornerbacks, 2 safeties, and a nickelback, I'm going with JPL.
Yeah, I think it's going to be JPL as well. And if you listen to just yesterday's camp opening presser, he mentioned that by name. We've got our nickel back, and that's JPL. So it doesn't take too many context clues to feel good about that one, too. He did it last year. He played really well last year, even though I feel like he was in more of a battle at times with more guys on that roster. This feels like his spot now. It feels like it's his not only to lose, but that he's just taken ownership of it, and this is the role he's settled into and is hopefully going to thrive in. Let's move to the back end, the center fielders, the last line of defense. Let's talk safeties now.
I'm going to start out with Wody. Daytione Smith had a heck of a year last year, especially the last half of the year. And he has been with us for a while now, and he's earned it, but two, he's getting that recognition in the preseason from people like Phil Steele, people in the SBC coaching circles and everything. I look for him to have a even bigger impact than he had last year, and he played very, very solid last year.
Yeah, he played really, really well. I think the preseason pub is merited. He turned into one of the better safeties in the conference by the time the season was wrapping up last year. I mean, he was Marshall's 6th leading tackler last year. So if you're just looking at the guys that return, he would be Marshall's 3rd leading tackler for the guys that are on the roster, just behind team leading tackler Boogie Trotter from a year ago and JaVale Gilmore. I mean, he put together a really, really good season last year. 50 total tackles, 27 of those were solo tackles. A tackle and a half for loss, 3 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery. I mean, a great all-around season. I've even seen some online sources going so far as to say that Daytione Smith is the best safety in the G5. So that's some pretty high praise from some places out there, but his play speaks for itself, man. Having Wody back, we've been talking about him for a number of years. It just feels like that this secondary, with the addition of Trotter, is going to go from one of the weakest points on this defense to one of the strongest points in this defense. Marshall has just had such good luck with safeties for, geez, man, how long? 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. I don't think you could probably go more than a 2-year stretch at any time, maybe a 3-year stretch without finding an all-conference safety for the last 30 years. I mean, we have been blessed at the safety position, and Daytione Smith is just the next iteration of great safeties at Marshall.
When we have him, I know for at least the App State game, I had him as Defensive Player of the Year, but didn't I have him as Defensive Player of the Week like twice?
I'm sure you did. Because he had
definitely that App State game.
Well, I was thinking it might have also been maybe Georgia State as well.
Yeah, but App State, he had 10 tackles, 5 and 5, and the tackles that he had were like open field, like very clutch, and some pass deflections. But he came up with a huge interception, 2 separate occasions. He had 3 on the year, but 2 of them were, I mean, exactly when we needed them to help with those games. Wish that I had the memory that I had just a few short years ago when it was even better than what it is now. But he had 10 of his 50 tackles in the App State game.
All right, so now we're down to one final position, the final safety that we think will be our projected starter. So far, dude, we're 4 for 4. Are we going 5 for 5?
I think we're going to, because Coach Gibson has mentioned Terrente Hinton quite a bit, and that's where I've got him at in this final safety spot. I like him not only because of that and because of the familiarity of the NC State, Gibby connection, but we saw him lay the absolute lumber in the spring game. He stood out, and generally in those games, because you're not getting a crazy amount of snaps, so you don't have a crazy amount of opportunities. He had 2 hits that were just bone shattering, and one of which, I mean, the entire stadium just went, ooh. Yeah. It wasn't even a loud pop. It was just like, that guy might be hurt. Yeah. So 6'2", 200 pounds, hits like that. And, Gibby liked him enough at NC State to tell him, hey, you come over here. We got a good spot for you. I think it's a no-brainer to put him in that final spot for me.
Well, obviously, yes, he's my final projected starter as well. You don't transfer somewhere as a redshirt senior or a senior and not expect to play. Yeah, the familiarity with Tony Gibson goes a long way. Tony knows what he's getting exactly out of Terrente Hinton. And honestly, you need a guy, one of your safeties needs to have that mean streak in him that will go up and absolutely lower the boom on somebody. Think of guys in the past like your Kool-Aid Owenses, like your Curtis Keys, like those guys that just go in and put their head down and go to work. I mean, you need an enforcer, and Terrente Hinton looks like he's going to be the enforcer in the secondary this year.
Come on, man. You mentioned Keys, but who else did I want you to mention? It's that one hit. It's that hit, man. You know, you're going to know as soon as I say it. Doug Hodges.
Oh, Doug Hodges, yeah.
You're going to remember the hit as soon as because that is the first thing you think of is Doug Hodges and that hit when he absolutely laid somebody out. But you're right. We've got a history of that, and it makes the receivers get a little bit of alligator arms the next time because they're constantly looking, oh, am I going to get my head taken off by this guy? It is an impact to be a big hitter like that. But you're talking about the size of one of those hybrid, almost like Kerryon Martin was last year, that could sneak up and play linebacker if he needed to. I mean, it's pretty invaluable at that size, and I love the fact that he's familiar with Gibby that much.
Yeah, you know what? I hate that we always go back and talk about guys that are from like our undergrad years, because I feel like the Conference USA era of fan and the newer Sunbelt era of fan, they might not know exactly what those guys mean. But let me give you some other guys that just last year, Cam Smith, very hard hitter,
Right.
come up and play close to the line of scrimmage, lower the boom on you. How about guys like Isaiah Norman? How about guys like, man, I just had one. Brandon Drayton. I mean, these are all hard hitting safeties, and you just need the guy that will do the dirty work and go up and lower the boom on somebody. And I tell you, if Rente Hinton plays the way we saw him play in the spring game, I think that receivers around the league, running backs around the league, are going to learn who he is real freaking quick. So give me the attitude, give me the motor, and give me Rente Hinton, the opposite of Wody Smith. Let's talk about some of those heavy contributors. I've highlighted 5, but you know, I don't know if we'll match, but
No, because I've got 8, and I'll be quick. I'll be quick on my others, but I'm going to start off with someone we've already mentioned, so not a lot to talk about him. But Eddie Pleasant III, I would have had him penciled in, as I mentioned, if Trotter was not on the roster.
Yeah, Eddie Pleasant III absolutely has to be, quote unquote, the first off the bench, right? Because he would have been penciled in to be a corner 1 or corner 2. So yeah, give me Eddie Pleasant III as well.
I'm going to stick with cornerbacks here too, and I'm going to mention Hall that came over from Central Connecticut State. He's been mentioned as well at that cornerback position by Coach Gibson in multiple press conferences. Before Boogie was back on the roster, this probably would have been your first person where we're putting Eddie Pleasant here to come in for cornerbacks.
Yeah, kind of move everybody up a spot, right? And Braden Hall falls right here too. I felt like he was a strong contender pre-Trotter's news to be in a dogfight for cornerback 2, potentially starting, but he was very, very productive at Central Connecticut State. And some people will go, oh yeah, well, that's Central Connecticut State. Let me remind you that Boogie Trotter came from Tennessee State, and well, he kind of lit it the hell up last year, right?
That's
so
right.
Don't always just judge. I mean, that's what we hate about teams that talk about Marshall. Well, he goes to Marshall. How good are they? And well, we know how good our players can be, right? So don't judge a book by the school. Just say, man, this kid can play. Watch the film, watch the highlights, go look at the stats from Central Connecticut State. You'll see this guy was heavily involved in their defense and racked some stats. He's going to be a playmaker for the Herd in 26. Who you got next?
I've got Caleb Clark Glover. We have heard Coach talk about him. You mentioned him already in this, and I see him helping out big time in the safeties.
Me too. To the point to where, I thought for a while that he might be one of those starters, and he still may be. He may be your first guy in due to injury or some other circumstance. That's how highly I think of Glover. He played really, really well from midseason to the end last year. You could see the development of his game from getting more and more meaningful action. He got better and better. And where other members of the secondary were struggling at times and struggling in places and spots, Glover got better, consistently better. And he was earning more and more reps. So
yeah, he got some starts.
That's hard to do when you got two safeties in Cam Smith and Wody that were playing at an extremely high level, but yet he earned more playing time. So I'm really, really high on Clark Glover this year in the back end of that secondary. Where are you going next?
I'm going with Louis Jules. He was the guy last year that I thought would play a bigger role coming out of the University of Charleston. But I do see him in this new defense that we have here getting some increased playing time this year. I was high on him last year. I'm high on him this year.
Yeah, I forgot to write him down. I knew there was somebody I was missing, and that's who I was missing, because I believe I named him as like the sleeper last year, because I thought, who sees somebody coming out of the University of Charleston to be an impactful player? But here we are, another year in the program, another returning semi-productive player last year. I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of production per se. He only appeared in 9 games for the Herd, only tallied a handful of tackles, but he's got a really good skill set. So with an improved defensive system and an improvement of an overall room elevation, I think this is going to hold true for a lot of these guys. I think a lot of these secondary guys are just going to be able to complement one another and be able to play freer and faster and, you know, like a little more faith in the guy next to you type of thing. So I should have had 6. I should have had Louis Jules on my list. Good call.
I'm going next with Daniel Harris, another guy we were both excited to see last year coming over from UAB. And if you remember, at one point they had him listed at 6'5" and ran a 4.4 40 on Twitter when they were talking about him transferring. Officially listed with us as 6'4", and he's got the height, the crazy athletic ability, and it's hard for me not to talk about him. And it's one of those things that everything's there physically. If it can just click with the coverage and all that stuff, play recognition, he's extremely dangerous.
Well, if you're looking for a 4th safety to round out a 2 deep at safety, that's probably one of the guys that you put on your short list. He did not make my list. I have another one penciled in at safety that I think is going to be a little bit more of a contributor this year. So, but I like, you can't teach 6'4", you know, and you can't teach 6'4" that moves like that and has instincts like that. So it's obviously a good choice. Where you got next? Who you got next?
Philip Davis. I don't know if that's who you had or not, but he had probably the most snaps last year that we have not mentioned yet. And I've got him on the list to also be a heavy contributor again this year.
Yeah, he's on my list as well. He did it a little bit for the Herd last year, so a little bit of returning continuity, a youngster that is expected to have, well, I'll say a youngster in the program to have a bigger role potentially this year. So, yeah, he made my cut. Yeah.
You remember he originally came from Michigan State. So, you know, he had a lot of offers coming out and the talent and everything. So, yeah, I look for him to do. The last 2 that I have, I've got almost interchangeable. So I'd like to mention them at the same time because a lot of it is the same. They were both true freshmen last year. They both came from WVU after not playing in a game, not being there during the season. And it's Zaw Jackson and Sammy Etienne. And I think that they will get worked into the rotation this year after having their first year in the program, in the nutrition, strength conditioning, getting used to the travel and the classes and all that stuff. I think you'll see a little bit bigger role than them last year, which was nothing really.
Yeah. Well, I think for sure you're going to see more of Zaw Jackson because I've heard Tony Gibson talk about him several times and guys that are impressing through the spring and then what they've seen like in weight room stuff and everything. And guys, he's excited to get a helmet on and get pads on and see what they can do now. So he was one of the guys that made my initial 5. I think Zaw Jackson particularly has caught the eye of some coaches, and is going to be vying for some legitimate playing time this year. Etienne, to me, is also interesting because those two guys mirror one another so similarly. Their journeys are really, really similar. Come from the same transfer school. They're both the same class status and all of that stuff. It's just I have heard Gibson talk about Jackson more, and maybe that's because he's a Huntington High School graduate and people just know that name in the Huntington area more readily. But it would not surprise me one bit to see both of these young guys worked into the rotation quite a bit, because you're also planning for your future. You know, you got upperclassmen now in from your cornerback one spot, both your safety spots. So you're going to be losing quite a bit of talent out of your secondary just in the starting five that we laid out. So you better develop some young talent, and both of those guys, Jackson and Etienne, could be the future of herd safeties in real time. Now, would you like to talk about some strengths and weaknesses?
Yes, and I have 3 and 3 again this week.
Good deal.
Back from the 5 and 2, I think it was last week. So, number one, starting off, I don't know anywhere else to start off than to say Boogie Trotter. He was absolutely everywhere last year, giving the best performance in coverages, like I said. Even found the end zone twice. You know, some of our offensive players did not do that. Him coming back adds an amazing boost to what we thought was an already improved secondary, which, of course, the title of this alludes to. And I just feel like that has to be your number one strength, going from good to, wow, dangerous.
Yeah. I shared responsibility with that strength between Boogie Trotter and Daytione Smith. That is my number one overall strength for this unit. The duo of Trotter and Smith, if they line those guys up on the same side of the field, that's essentially half of the deep field that you are taking away, or you are daring an offense to make a play on you on that side of the field. I've said it already. Trotter was one of the best players in the entire conference last year, barring no position limitations. He led the herd in tackles and interceptions, for crying out loud. He scored 2 defensive touchdowns, for crying out loud. And then you talk about Wody adding another 50 tackles, 124 tackles between those guys. I mean, come on. 3 more interceptions accredited to Wody. These guys were playmakers up and down the field all freaking season long. They have to be your biggest strengths. I mean, they accounted for 13 freaking interceptions. You know what I mean? They both also understand what went wrong in 2025. And those are conversations that we're not going to have. Those are conversations that are being had in the DB rooms, in the safety room, and in the corner room. Those guys are probably being very, very vocal about what went right and what went wrong and what cannot repeat itself in 2026. These are legitimate weapons at corner and safety. I mean, the ceiling and the floor of the secondary was just elevated by the return of Boogie Trotter. It already had elevated some without him. With him, it just goes to a whole nother level. Biggest strength by far. What's your number 2?
Number 2 is experience. And Katie, listen to this. Boogie, Wody, JPL, Trente Hinton, Braden Hall, and Pete Shue are all redshirt seniors or graduate players. This is their 5th year at a minimum in a program. Insane. 7 others are redshirt juniors. This room is packed with upperclassmen that have been in programs for 4 to 5 years now. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 7, 13 have either been 4-year or 5th year now players.
I'm trying to do the math in my head. That's like something like 60 years of combined experience.
Well, it's hard to tell. Like Wody has been here more than 5 years, with his, he had the COVID year and a medical year. This will be his, I think, 7th year. And it's insane when you start adding these up, just how experienced. I mean, sometimes it doesn't click until your final year. You've got 4 or 5 years in a program and you've been hitting the the gym those 5 times. You've just been incrementally getting better each and every year. But then sometimes you've been behind someone that's an all-time player, and you've just waited your turn. We saw that with Wyatt Fricks in basketball this year. Look at the leap he took in his final year, and now he's heading to the pros.
Mm-hmm.
I really think having 13 either in their 4th or 5th year, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, I didn't dive deep into the roster, like that and just check out everybody's class status. But when you put it that way, how can it not be a strength? Yeah. This is so much. There's no substitute for experience. I mean, raw ability and talent will take you really, really far. But there's also an argument to be said to being in enough games and seeing enough plays that you've had enough stuff happen to you, or you've seen enough stuff that it's just a reaction now. Nothing's a surprise anymore. I mean, all the ability in the world will only take you so far. There's still preparation that has to be done and execution that has to be done. Excellent strength. But my number 2 overall strength is portal player impact. You've got Terrence Hinton projected to be your starter at safety. MacArthur's projected to be your cornerback number 2. Eddie Pleasant pushing him for that job, and we know that he will play heavily. Braden Hall coming in with 13 starts and 10 pass breakups in 2025. Dude, the portal additions created legitimate competition in this room. Legitimate competition in this room. Marshall added experience at corner and at safety. I mean, the additions also raised the floor of the 2 deep across every position. The staff now has more flexibility than they had last year at nickel and dime and these matchup type packages. I mean, they did a phenomenal job at going out and get guys that round out depth and will push one another for starting roles and heavy contributor roles. This was an excellent job. We've said this for a couple of positions that you could tell it was a point of emphasis. I don't think it was a point of emphasis more than in the secondary. And then you get the added benefit of getting Boogie Trotter back for an extra year. I mean, that's a gift that I don't think they couldn't have counted on it. But when it happened, wow, all that hard work that they put into portal and recruiting just notched up by having one of the best players in the league fall right back onto your roster. What do you got for number 3?
So the final one, I rolled a couple of things into it because it just seemed to fit. I've got Dean Hood and Chip West, but I also said plus the new Brad Lambert defense. And bringing all 3 of those guys and the history that they have together, I felt like that should be one strength instead of splitting that up. But Dean Hood and Chip West are splitting cornerbacks and safeties, whereas last year you had one. And Jared Hawley, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. We talked at one time about splitting up these different positions and how you can focus more of your time on that specific position instead of having to take care of 20 defensive backs. Now you're doing 10 in their specific roles. And I think that that is a big point. But Brad Lambert bringing those 2 in and also having his defense being that hybrid that we've talked about, that it may be the 4-2-5 most of the time. Do not be surprised if they slip into the 3-3-5. Do not be surprised if they're in a 4-3. Do not be surprised if they're in a 3-4. You may still see 5 DBs on the field at the same time a lot of time, just as you did last year, but it's going to be totally different based on this new defense and the Chip West, Dean Hood connection that we're going to have.
Would it surprise you to know that my number 3 overall strength is specialized coaching? It's a huge strength. It's a complete 180 from last year. And I'm not pinning this on a coach, mind you, but we saw what went wrong with the chunk plays through the secondary and how Marshall ranked at the bottom or near the bottom in all of those major chunk play categories. Dean Hood now focuses on the safeties. Chip West now focuses on your corners. You're talking about attention to detail with technique, responsibility, communication, all the things that went awry in places in 2025, hopefully will not go awry in 2026. This split of responsibilities, now having 2 veteran coaches that know Brad Lambert and that Brad Lambert knows, should create a more detailed, position-specific much more effective summer practice schedule, getting prepared for week 1 and beyond. Corners and safeties, they have different footwork, leverages, and communication responsibilities. So now being able to dial all that in, you can't tell me that if that improves over 25, that it wouldn't have accounted for a touchdown here or a touchdown there, which would have ultimately probably improved a game here or a game there. I mean, both, I don't know. This just seems like the biggest hidden strength, because we want to talk about the athletes and we want to talk about what's going to happen on the field. But coaches' responsibility is to prepare their players to put them in a position to win. And I think by doing this, maybe more than any other coaching move other than bringing in Brad Lambert, this is probably the move that could pay the biggest dividends the soonest for the Herd in 2026. It could be the difference between watching somebody else in December or being the team playing in December for a Sun Belt championship. Let's talk about some of the unit concerns, though, because there were plenty from 2025. Some of them hopefully won't trickle over into 2026, but there are still concerns. So what's your number one concern?
Number one for me is depth performance. The starters look solid, but we need the contributors to not have a big drop off for this room to succeed. Right now, that remains to be seen. You know, we can talk all we want about what we project. We think that Eddie Pleasant would have been the starter if Trotter wouldn't have been here, but how big of a drop off could there be between the two? Someone goes out like a Wody or a Trente Hinton or a JPL or a Boogie or MacArthur's, anyone that we had there, they go out with a cramp, they go out with a stinger, they go out with any kind of meaningful thing. If someone gets torched like they did last year, all of a sudden this defensive backfield went from a huge, dangerous, as you said, strength to, now we're having the problems we had last year. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those that we constantly have as a weakness on any of those that we've been doing now for 5 years is we have not seen it yet. We got a lot of new players that have come in. We just need to make sure that this depth that we feel that we have actually lives up to the expectations we have for it.
Yeah, that's actually my number 2 overall concern for this unit is depth beyond the 2 deep, which is exactly what you're talking about. We know the projected starters are talented. We know they are. We know the primary rotation is pretty solid. The concern begins when you got to get deeper and deeper into the room, and we've heard Tony Gibson talk about that. He was like, we'll be okay as long as we stay relatively healthy. If we start losing guys left and right and we're getting deep into the room, then, well, we're just like everybody else. We're going to be hurting if we get too deep into any room, not just the secondary. I mean, young and unproven players, I don't think you want to see anybody get forced into action out of necessity, especially in the early part of our Sun Belt schedule where those tiebreakers are really, really going to matter. Yeah. Every game matters, but those first 4 Sun Belt games are probably going to win or lose your Sun Belt season for you. So you don't want anybody thrust into action. You would like to be able to use them as a luxury, because they've proven they can be on the field and help you win a football game. But Gibson has mentioned secondary depth all spring long and all summer long. He knows what the concern was, and I think they've taken steps to rectify that. But again, you got to see it, right? We're projecting. We're speculating. A deep roster does not automatically mean dependable depth. It just means you've got a lot of guys on that particular or in that particular position group. It's a huge concern, and it's valid. What's your number 2 concern?
Missed tackles. Last year, we gave up huge chunk plays. I went over those earlier, many of which were from missed tackles. Quite a few had several missed tackles on the same play. We have got to do better on that this year. Now, again, it's a different roster. Not everyone's new, but a lot of players left that had a lot of play time last year. So there is a lot of new, even though we have a lot returning. But we had that as those chunk plays cost us what we've said, 3, possibly even 4 games. It's got to be a huge concern this year until it's not.
And it is for me too. It's my number 3 overall concern, but it's linked in with communication, tackling, and consistency. The athletic ability is present. You know, there were guys that were on part of this defense last year that played big roles, and we still saw how some of the results played out. Roughly 40% of our projected 2 deep is new to Marshall. So will they be able to effectively communicate with whatever combo is on the field? Will guys find themselves in the right place? There are a number of guys that we think are absolutely dangerous because they were last year, but there are also a number of question marks. And how will this whole unit gel? That's always the big concern. Will it be in week 2, or will it be in week 10, or will it not be at all? That's always the big concern. So very valid and quite concerning. What do you got for your number 3 overall concern?
It's kind of a mirror of my number 2, but it's blown coverage. Another huge contributor to those chunk plays. We have to eradicate the blown coverages this year. The big thing about missed tackles was sometimes it was extending drives because it would give first downs, or it would make preventing us from giving them stops in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage to giving them 3 or 4 yards, which allowed them to get first downs later in the drive. Some of them went for huge chunk plays, but on blown coverage, almost all of those went for chunk plays, and a large percentage of those went for touchdowns. So I put that as a totally different category than the missed tackles, even though both of them resulted in bad stuff for us. I feel like the blown coverage is way worse when you have someone wide open, nobody around him for 10 yards, walking into the end zone.
Yeah, optically, that just also looks bad.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to see that. I alluded to this in the concern I just spoke about with talking about how soon will they gel. And it's hard to talk about things like communication and tackling and stuff without kind of giving that away. But it would have been able to flow more freely if I would have been able to give you my number 1 overall concern at the forefront of this episode, or at the forefront of this segment. My number 1 overall concern is unit cohesion. I mean, look at it. Boogie and Wody both played at a high level in 2025, and still it went horrendously wrong in several areas. Yeah. Right? So their individual successes did not prevent Marshall from becoming, or from the secondary from becoming Marshall's Achilles heel in 2025. Repeatedly allowed catastrophic explosive plays. All those chunk plays being near the bottom in the rankings in the country. I mean, those breakdowns suggested that there was just, or those plays suggested that there were breakdowns in assignment integrity and leverages and just overall communication. Unit cohesion is easily my number 1 concern. You had 2 of the best secondary players last year on this same defense. They returned this year to hopefully play at a high level, and still it went as wrong as it went sometimes. So can this group become more cohesive than the last group? I certainly hope so. We cannot weather another series of secondary gaffes like we went through in seemingly a week in, week out basis in 2025. Well, let's do the Thundercast 5, Russ. I think this will be pretty fun this time. If I can just find, there it is. Who is your biggest loss from 2025 in the secondary?
It was going to be Boogie, but now that he's back, it's Cam Smith.
You know, I actually wrote that. I actually said that, and I thought, well, Russ might say that, but I wrote the same thing. If it was going to be Boogie Trotter, but now it's Cam Smith, and Cam Smith is no small loss from the safety position, man. What a heat seeker. Holy moly. I hope Rente can fill that and then some, because Cam was real fun to watch last year. Real fun. So who are you most excited to see then?
It's Boogie being able to come back. He was electric last year. I'd love to see him top what he did last year. It's going to be tough with 5 interceptions and 2 for touchdowns. That's always going to be tough to match or top. But I'd like to remind you that he put a tweet out before well before the season last year that said he wanted that award for the best defensive back in the country. He put that out. That's ballsy, but that's confidence in your ability. And then what did he do? He came out and put up numbers that would do that. He was near the top or leading all year long in interceptions and for touchdowns. And then he was way up there in cornerback tackles. I mean, he was one of the best cornerbacks in the country last year. I cannot wait to see what he gets to come back and do. So I'm so excited to see that.
I, too, am most excited to see Boogie Trotter. Absolute electricity in a bottle. First team All Sun Belt, led the team in tackles and interceptions, scored 2 defensive touchdowns. I mean, come on, man, come on. Impacts the game in coverage, in run support, through his tackling and turnover creation. He was one of the conference's best freaking football players. I mean, the motivation of a season now to where he thought his collegiate career was over, and all of a sudden it was gifted back to him. You want to talk about unfinished business. I mean, this guy has been given a gift that few players have been given. Another opportunity to come back on an even better team than the one he played on the year before. I am absolutely most excited to see Boogie Trotter go absolutely buck freaking wild in 2026. Who is your breakout player?
So I could have went a couple different ways on this, but I went with Terrente Hinton. And my reasoning is Charles McCarthrins, who I expect to be a starter, has started 3 years at Buffalo. Even though it would be a breakout with Marshall, he's already a starter. Terrente Hinton seemed like he was just behind someone to where he never got to do that breakout. And I think coming here, fresh start, getting turned loose, we saw a glimpse of what he could do in the spring game. I really think he is primed for that textbook breakout season.
My breakout player for 2026 is Terrente Hinton. Redshirt senior entering his final year of collegiate football, new to Marshall, but not new to Tony Gibson. I mean, he has one season to make an impact and compete for a championship. That kind of stuff just screams breakout year. Trotter provides a proven communicator and playmaker nearby, and that's why I keep saying Boogie's return is going to free a lot of these guys up to play faster, freer, and be able to do more of the stuff that accentuates their natural skill set. I mean, come on, dude. Terrente Hinton could be an absolute force from a safety position as long as he keeps it within the confines of the rule book. I mean, I love the mean streak in that dude, and I don't think too many of our opponents are going to appreciate that. But give me Terrente Hinton as a breakout. Who is your who's your MVP for the year?
So it's going to be Boogie. And it's for the reasons you just mentioned, but he comes back and that allows everybody else to have that increased role. Him coming back is just massive. You know, again, we talked about it going from good to dangerous, the title of the episode. For that to happen, that seems like it has to be your MVP. I'm not talking about who's going to have the most tackles at the end of the year. I'm not talking about who's going to have the best grade on PFF or, you know, win the most defensive player of the week. By nature of him coming back, what he brings to the table and allows everybody else to do, he is the MVP already. It's his to lose now.
Yeah, I agree. He's my MVP too. And let's talk about you talked about the season that he had last year, and you don't expect him to necessarily replicate that, but let me put that in a historical context for you. 2 interception returns for touchdown last year, right? That already ties him for 3rd all time for interceptions for touchdown in a career. One more and he gets tied for 1st all time. And if he happens to take 2 to the house, he's going to stand alone atop the record books in that category. And man, what a category to own if you're able to do that. The influence on an opposing offense, and particularly a quarterback, I mean, there's a lot of film out there on Boogie, man, and I don't think that's necessarily a detriment. I think that you're going to look at that film and go, okay, we don't want to target this guy because you might complete some passes on him, but he will take one away from you. And he will take it to the house if we let him get his hands on it and some green grass in front of him. Dude, the effect on an offense and on a defense cannot be understated. And you're right, he may not lead the team in tackles. He may not lead the team in impact plays or anything else, but it's because of his presence on the field that allows everybody else to do what they do well, all the way down to a defensive line. He's that impactful. He was that impactful last year, and I expect him to be that impactful this year. Who, though, is your sleeper in 2026?
I could have went several different ways as well, and I went with Daniel Harris because of the size, the speed, the intangibles are there. Can he put it all together? And that is the embodiment of a sleeper, because if he had put it all together, we'd be talking about him as a starter.
This is where we finally differ. And that's not surprising because there are so many people you could pick. And I'm picking the local redshirt freshman. Give me Zod Jackson. Got to. Everybody was so excited when he chose to come to Huntington, and he's so talented in high school. He comes right down off the hill and goes to Jones C. Edwards Stadium, through the program in Morgantown for a year, through the weight program in Huntington last year. I mean, come on. Poised to break out. You don't need to become the leader of the secondary in order to break out this year, in order to be the sleeper this year. You get to be surrounded by guys like Boogie and Daytione and Rente and McCarthrans, right? So you're going to have a certain amount of cushion and skill set that will allow you to learn on the fly. Here's the thing. I don't think he's going to do a whole lot of learning on the fly so that it's a detriment to the team. I think this kid is an amazing athlete. I think that the coaches have some faith in him now to be an impactful player. And I think given the opportunities to show that he belongs on the field, he will do exactly that. And I think he's going to be the guy that you look at this year and go, wow, he was a meaningful contributor. And then next year we sat here talk about him being a projected starter, or we talk about him being a breakout player. So give me Zod Jackson.
One minor little thing that I have to say is Zod Jackson was an early enrollee in the spring up there, and he only spent the spring before he was cut. So don't put too much of that WU stink on him. He wasn't there for a year, so we had less to take away from him saying, don't do that.
Well, he took a lot of it off himself, but still, you're moving weights and you're working out. That's the important part.
It is the important part.
How about a final verdict, Russ? Is Marshall better in 2026 than they were in 2025?
Oh, my goodness, yes. And you remember everything that I read off about the chunk plays and what you read about the stats and where they ranked and things. It has to be better than it was last year. But again, we are returning a lot of the good play that we had last year, and we added just so much through the portal and the young players that are expected to now have a bigger increased role. By nature, it's going to be better, but bringing Boogie back took it from a yes to an oh my goodness yes.
I typed down one word, nice and big and bold, and it's absolutely. There is no way you can deny that right now, even on paper, this is a better unit than it was last year. I put a lot of faith in the defensive scheme. I put a lot of faith in the coaching responsibilities being split in two. I put a hell of a lot of faith in the returning players that come back. This has never been about a question of athleticism or speed or anything like that. A lot of times it was communication, angles, poor tackling, going for the hit instead of wrapping up and making sure you're tackling the football. These are all things that should get ironed out when you're able to pay more close attention to technique by splitting coaching responsibilities. And let's face it, Brad Lambert's just not going to put up with it. If you can't tackle the football, then you probably won't find the field. He's that type of guy. There was a pretty big difference in the elevation from the floor a year ago and the floor now. The addition of Boogie Trotter takes that floor all the way up a hell of a lot farther than it was. I mean, this is a question now of execution between the whistles. That's where the answer comes to pass. We can talk about it all day long, but if they can't effectively change the bad habits from last year, this can't be and won't be a title contending team. It'll be a really good team that we set week in and week out and go, chunk plays killed the herd, chunk plays killed the herd, chunk plays killed the herd. We did it week in and week out last year, and it's just not a song I want to sing again. I think the tackling must improve. The communication must improve. The explosive breakdowns have got to go. The penalties have got to go. But, I can weather a few of those. If those issues are corrected, Marshall has everything necessary to be not just a top defensive back unit in the Sun Belt, but be the top unit in the Sun Belt. Final statement for me, before Trotter's return, this looked like a secondary with the potential to become one of the better units after they are the best unit, in my opinion. Got anything else for me?
Just thanks again to Secure Construction. Make sure to reach out to them for roofing or making your shower bathroom safe.
Yep. Certainly appreciate those guys once again for coming aboard. Give them a call and tell them you heard about them from the Thundercast. Russ, take us out of here.
Yeah, so whether you see us at the Jack, whether you see us at the Joan, or whether you see us at the Vet, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the Thundercast. Come back next week. There ain't but one left to talk about, and we're talking gunslingers, baby. It's the quarterbacks. We'll see y'all in about a week. Later.